Welcome to A Fortnight on the Isle. I'm your host, King Crusoe. You can call me KC, and happy Independence Day. Yesterday, I suppose, at the time of this video's release, to my American audience, my primarily American audience. Hope everybody had a good holiday celebrating America's 250th birthday. For me, it's been a pretty strange fortnight these last couple of weeks, all things considered. Definitely a bit of a difficult one, personally speaking, but I'm still standing. We're here, entering now the back half of 2026, which is a really crazy thing to try to admit, but I don't want to waste much time in this video, as I'm sure I'll be doing quite a bit of rambling through a couple sections of the video, but we're just going to jump right on into things, to avoid wasting too much more time than necessary. Timestamps in the description below, of course, for any sections you may personally be interested in. We shall start off like normal with the bi-weekly reading, however, and say that not very much reading got done the last couple of weeks. Definitely nowhere near as much as I would have liked, and nowhere near as much as I kind of implicitly planned. I did finish The Heart of the Naga by Lee Young-do. I believe last time I was somewhere around the halfway mark. Yeah, I was about 56% of the way through. I did finish this book the last couple of weeks, but the book took me a week and a half, maybe even closer to 2 full weeks to actually work through. I only read, 9 of those days or something like that, but 9 out of, I want to say, 15 or 16 days that I actually spent with this book I actually read. It kind of goes to show how little reading that I did, relatively speaking, to normal. But I did enjoy The Heart of the Naga. It was a good time. I really like a lot of the culture and world building stuff, as I believe I mentioned last time. And the ending was basically what I expected it to be, all things considered. That being that there's not really much of an ending here. Definitely a pretty anticlimactic one in a lot of ways, but like I said, I was kind of expecting that going into this, having read some reviews and understanding the structure of the story based off of Reputation. It seemed like this was going to be a thing where it's like one book, one long volume that just is split into 4 different bindings. That is definitely the case, at least so far with this first book. It doesn't really have that much of an arc in and of itself. There's a couple things that you could maybe consider to be sort of along those lines, but you can definitely tell this is just one part of a bigger story, so I'm not going to hold that against it. I really enjoyed what I did read, and like I said, the culture and world building stuff is great. The second book does come out in January, so I'll be looking forward to reading that here in about 6 months' time. So I had a good time with it. But that was the vast majority of what I got read the last couple of weeks. Otherwise, I did start recently, in fact, just today, actually, reading Equal Rights, the 3rd book of Discworld. Actually, no, it wasn't today. It was yesterday that I started reading this at the time of recording. So right now, I'm about 33% of the way through and having a good time. Definitely a little bit different than the first 2 books, though, and I knew that going in as well. This is no surprise at all. But just kind of the different focus that it has is a little surprising, in that those first couple of books have much more, we'll say the writing is more heavily geared towards one-liners, punchlines, jokes. Those kinds of things are definitely a little bit more prominent in those first 2 books. It's not to say that they don't have anything else going on, but that is a very big part of what that experience was, especially the light fantastic. I recall, highlighting or, marking out different passages frequently, very constantly, just almost every lengthy scene there was at least one thing that I would kind of take a picture of, highlight, and share it, and people would be like, this was funny to me, type of thing. Equal Rights has so far not had much of anything that I would point out in that way, outside of the cold open. So I suppose the first page and a half introducing the world and the way that this book does it in a much more straightforward fashion, but is still no less funny. It might be the best opening of the 3 books so far, but as for the rest of it, it's just different. It's very much more plot forward. It's more character forward in a way that isn't just the zaniness of those characters, but actually building something a little bit deeper with them, and that makes for something really interesting so far. Like I said, it's definitely a little bit different. It's not quite so much one-liner, punchline as heavy. It's more plot and story forward in a different way, and so I'm having a different kind of experience with Equal Rights than I did with the first 2 books. Not a bad experience at all, just a different one, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this continues to go. I have enjoyed this so far, even if it's not, as funny as the other two were, but it has had some amusing bits and still some pretty good material in there nonetheless. Still enjoying myself, like I said. I have also, the last couple of weeks, started my next manga, that being Vinland Saga. So this is the Omnibus Volume 1 in the English, so I think combining the first 2 volumes of the original, and I've read 3 chapters so far. 3 chapters in manga doesn't sound like much, because chapters here are generally like 20 pages or something like that, somewhere within that range, 20 to 30 pages maybe. Each of the first 3 chapters of this have been a lot longer than that. Chapters 2 and 3 were each 40 pages. Chapter 1 by itself was 90 pages, so I am a decent bit of the way through. I forget the exact percentage. I want to say I'm around 37%, so a little over a third of the way through this omnibus volume. Like I said, I've only read 3 chapters, but those 3 chapters have been really, really good. The first 2 chapters being like a cold open, introduction to some of these characters in the world, before chapter 3 takes us into what seems like will be an extended flashback for the rest of this volume, basically. If my guess is correct anyway. It seems like that's probably what's going to happen, but those first 3 chapters have been amazing, really good, probably my favorite opening of any of the manga that I've read so far, and maybe not the most affecting necessarily, because Volume 1 of Monster was really, really, really good. So we'll see how the rest of this volume goes to see if it can take down Volume 1 of Monster for being maybe my favorite volume of manga that I've read up to this point. Well, I guess Goodbye Area exists, but that's kind of a different story. Anyway, the point is, I'm really enjoying Vinland Saga so far, and my goal for the next 2 weeks when it comes down to reading are primarily of finishing both of these, and I should be able to finish them without too much problem. Vinland Saga will probably take me most of the fortnight. I may end up having time to go into Volume 2 by the time, you know, the next one of these updates rolls around. We'll see. It depends on how much active reading of that I actually get done. Rena and I are going on a looser schedule there. Equal Rights, I will definitely finish by the next Fortnight on the Isle. There's no way it takes me 2 weeks to read the rest of this book. But then I said a pretty similar thing with Heart of the Naga when I said that that would not take me more than a week to finish. Or most likely wouldn't take me more than a week to finish. So we'll see what happens there. Otherwise, the only other major reading project that I have on my plate right now is Legacy of Ash by Matthew Ward, the first book of the Legacy trilogy. It's series that I've been really looking forward to giving a shot. Can't wait to actually start reading this. Siri, shut up. I was not talking to you. Leave me alone. Yeah, I'm just really looking forward to this. It's basically the main thing on my docket at this point, because Equal Rights won't take me that long to finish. It'll only take me the next handful of days at most. And so this is basically what I've got going on for the next... I have it more or less scheduled out for the next 3 weeks. Just, you know, to give me some space and time to actually finish it, just in case there are days where I don't read, or if I don't get as much read as I would like to, or if other projects get in the way, because June was a month where I didn't get very much reading done, and so I'm kind of anticipating similar being the case for the next 3 months, just in case. Not going to plan a whole bunch of reading outside of these. Fantasy is like my main thing, so I'm looking forward to starting that. But that is everything that I have to talk about directly with regard to the reading. So we'll go ahead and talk about the gaming next, bi-weekly gaming. And yeah, there's a heck of a lot more to talk about here. I'm going to try not to ramble too much about this stuff, but needless to say, part of the reason why I didn't do much reading recently was because I haven't been able to really focus much, so I've been doing a lot of gaming instead. Over the last couple of weeks, I did finally finish streaming The Last of Us Part 2. I believe this last fortnight was only adding... 2 hours? I think it was just the 2 hours to finish the game in the last stream, if I'm not mistaken. So that is what I got done of that, putting my total runtime with The Last of Us Part 2 this year at around 23 hours. I can't remember what my total playtime in the game is at this point. It's probably like 150, I think, between my 3 playthroughs, plus all of the no return game mode that I ended up playing a couple years ago. So, you know, plenty of time, but only 23 hours this time, and I think that'll probably be the last time that I ever play The Last of Us Part 2. I don't really feel the need to ever touch that again, I don't think. Outside of The Last of Us Part 2, the vast majority of my gaming time was spent playing Far Cry 6. I believe I mentioned this last time, how I started playing a couple of the DLC, because I just kind of got on a whim. I was like, you know, I kind of want to actually, I play those. I got them for super cheap, so I decided to just, you know, re-download that or get it transferred back over to the PS5 hard drive and start playing it. And well, needless to say, I finished all of the DLC and also did a little bit more than that. I got kind of addicted. It's kind of the same thing happened when I started playing Far Cry 6 back in late 2023 and finished it in early 2024, where I just got really addicted to the gameplay loop. You know, I do like first-person shooters, but I'm not a big fan of multiplayer stuff, and I'm also not huge on the campaign style of much of the, like, Battlefield, Call of Duty style of first-person shooters. It's just not really my thing. My thing is more akin to something you might find in Far Cry, not to say like Far Cry specifically, but just those kinds of stories as far as an FPS goes is going to work for me better than a COD campaign is. Needless to say, I spent a lot of time playing Far Cry 6 the last couple of weeks. I want to say I spent a total of somewhere around 70 hours in the game the last 2 weeks or so, and somewhere around 50 hours in the last like 2.5 weeks. And we're also going to say tomorrow I'm going to be adding another 1 hour onto the game, and that is because I went back and I got the rest of the trophies for the Lost Between Worlds DLC, and then I finished playing and got all of the trophies and did everything that I could, basically, for all intents and purposes, in all 3 of the other DLC based off of the 3 previous games: Voss's Mind, Pagan's Mind, and Joseph's Mind, of course. So spent a lot of time running through all of those multiple times to get everything. Just had a lot of fun. The gameplay loop of those latter 3 DLC in particular were really, really great. I had a really fun time with all of those. I think visually speaking, Pagan's Mind was my favorite. Joseph's Mind was probably my favorite from a gameplay perspective, I guess, just in terms of what actually was being run mission-wise, and, you know, as far as how satisfying the repetitiveness, I suppose, of it all goes, whereas the actual, you know, quote-unquote story stuff going on was probably like a tie between Voss and Joseph. I don't know. But being somebody who hasn't played Far Cry's 3 through 5 at this point, that was just kind of my impressions with those DLC. Very interesting. I know I've probably basically subjected myself implicitly to a bunch of spoilers for those games, but it made me more excited to actually go back and play them for myself. Had a ton of fun with those, probably about 45 to 50 hours that I put into the DLC. The other like 25 hours that I put into Far Cry 6 was actually in the base game, though, because when I went back and was getting some of the trophies for the DLC, I went back to the Lost Between Worlds and got the rest of the trophies there. I was like, you know, maybe I could still just try for Platinum in the base game. I don't know why I haven't. I went back, was just like, oh, it's probably because many of these trophies were special operations related, and I didn't know if I wanted to bother. But then I bothered, and basically the same thing happened as with some of those DLC, where the special operations, there's like 5 different types, all of them have multiple difficulties, and there are even some bonus trophies associated with completing all of them on the higher difficulty rankings, and I subjected myself to a lot more frustration than I honestly probably should have completing all of those. So at this point, I've got every single trophy except for one, and that is because one trophy for the base game requires you to beat a few insurgent leaders. That requires completing insurgencies, but those are on a weekly refresh schedule. I'll be able to get the 3rd and final one of those insurgencies completed tomorrow at the time of this video's release to have the platinum, so that'll add like 1 hour onto the game time. And then I'll be done with Far Cry 6, have the platinum trophy. I'll be able to actually make a couple videos about it. I was thinking I would make one about the DLC. I think I'll probably make a couple different videos about the game at this point. So that was just a lot of fun the last couple weeks. Sorry to ramble about that particular game for a hot minute, but that was a lot of what my last couple of weeks were, was just playing an absurd amount of Far Cry 6, and I frankly did have a lot of fun. A lot of frustration with a couple of things. The special operations especially, the mastery level 3s on a couple of those were extraordinarily unfun, but you know, it was still something that I did. For some reason I subjected myself to that. I didn't even have to for the platinum, mind you. The special operations specific trophies for the mastery levels are separate trophy lists on PlayStation, so they're not even contributing to the platinum. I don't know why I forced myself to do them. I just did. Who knows? Anyway, I've spent way too long talking about that. The only other gaming related stuff that I've done the last couple of weeks, notably at the time of this video's release yesterday, I just streamed The Last of Us Part 1. I streamed the No Return DLC, so I spent a couple hours on that, and I'm going to continue streaming that on Saturdays for the next few weeks. That's basically what I got planned to do there. In fact, I'm recording this like literally right after that stream finished. I came right over to this scene to record this, so that's what's going on there. And then I went back and, surprisingly enough, actually went back to Alan Wake Remastered. I transferred that back over to my hard drive for some reason last night, and started a Nightmare difficulty playthrough. This is something that I've been debating doing ever since I played the base game a handful of months ago, and was like, maybe I should give this a try, so I'm giving it a try. I'm playing Nightmare difficulty right now, getting the Nightmare-specific manuscript pages as well alongside it. It's not gone too terribly so far with the first 2 episodes, but I remember the most frustrating points in the game being in chapters 4 and 5, so we will see how the rest of the base game goes there, but I might go for Platinum and Alan Wake Remastered too, so we'll see. If I get through the Nightmare playthrough and get those Nightmare-specific manuscript pages, then I'll go through and get the rest of the trophies on the easier difficulty and just call that good, and we'll see. We'll see what happens. Maybe I'll be able to update more about that here in a couple of weeks. But I spent two and a half hours doing that last night at the time of recording. Probably going to be doing that the rest of the weekend at the time of recording. So that's what I've got going on, is Last of Us Part 1, I'm going to be streaming that the next couple weeks, and then I'm going to finish playing Alan Wake Remastered. I was going to do Resident Evil 4. The last couple of these updates, I mentioned that I was going to record the Let's Play for that. Frankly, because of the holiday weekend, I should have planned to do that this weekend. I would have had like 3 days in a row to just plow through the entire Let's Play. But then I was doing other gaming-related stuff instead. I just didn't feel like doing Resident Evil 4 at all. Nothing against the game, just I didn't feel like recording a Let's Play, so I haven't felt like working the last couple of weeks. But now that I'm getting back in that mood, that should happen over these next couple of weekends, I think. But yeah, that is way too many minutes spent on the bi-weekly gaming. Let's talk about cinema. There's a heck of a lot less to talk about here, and that is because I did not actually watch anything the last couple of weeks, because I spent all of my time gaming, so that should be really no surprise. As for what I plan to watch, I plan to go see The Odyssey in theaters opening weekend. I believe that is technically this fortnight when that actually opens in theaters. So that is basically my only movie watching plans that I've got going on this fortnight. See, that section was short. That should make up for how long the gaming section was. Let's talk about the upcoming releases, however, with a little bit of an asterisk here, and that is because some of these videos I don't actually have like set in stone, as in I'm not 100% certain if these are actually going to be the videos that I produce. As a result of not really working the last couple of weeks, not doing anything, that meant that I just didn't do any video prep. Normally I have all of my videos and stuff, or the vast bulk of my videos for any given month done, you know, at either by the time the month comes around, or I do it within the first week of the month, and I haven't done any of that this month actually. So we're sitting in a place where I just haven't done anything. I know that's redundant to what I said before, but basically what that means is that my video schedule that I have here, that I have on my calendar written down, I basically came up with roughly like last night basically, and I'm not 100% happy with it. I went through a couple different iterations of it, so some of these ideas might change, some of the order of videos might change. That's what I'm trying to say here. In either case, some of these videos are set in stone, such as Movie Magic tomorrow on the 6th on the second channel will be a review of Disclosure Day, Steven Spielberg's newest film. I probably should have released that video a little bit earlier, but you know, I had a good time with that movie, and that video is essentially me doing my first impressions. Like, I got home from watching the movie and recorded that video basically immediately, and I watched that opening weekend. So it's been a couple weeks now, but that video is a first impressions type of thing, and I enjoyed the movie. I enjoyed talking about it, so that's coming out tomorrow. On Tuesday the 7th on the main channel will be my regular monthly reading wrap-up and TBR video. That video is also certain. I did produce that one at the same time that I produced the State of Affairs video this week, so that is coming out on Tuesday like normal. On Thursday the 9th will maybe be a video where I just talk about some of my favorite things of 2026 so far. You know, it's ostensibly going to be a book binge video on the main channel because books is the main thing that I do at this point, but I might talk about some movies and games in there as well and tie the second channel into that video just to make it one video of my favorite things that I've, you know, seen, watched, played, read so far in the year, listened to, whatever. So I might go ahead and do that this Thursday. Like I said, that video's not final. I think I might go ahead and do that though, since it is the back half of 2026 now, and just kind of have it be a little brief wrap up of the year so far. So I might go ahead and do that. Also on Saturday the 11th on the second channel will be the first Let's Play, or the first live stream for The Last of Us Part 1 proper, where I play through the actual base game. I'm probably going to play through the prologue section, you know, obviously, plus all of the Boston stuff in the summer. So everything basically up till Pittsburgh, I think, is what I'm going to end up playing. Not sure how long that would take stream-wise, but I think that sounds like a fairly good split chapter-wise, so we'll see what happens there. That's basically what I plan to do on Saturday. Next Monday, on the 13th, on the second channel, will be another Movie Magic video. This video is also already done ahead of time. That is going to be my review of Obsession, a video that I didn't think I would make. That's part of the reason why it's coming out later than all of the rest. And that's because I wasn't sure I would even make a review about it. I wasn't sure I would talk about it because I didn't want to think about it after I first watched it. So that video will be going over my experience with that and some of what I was able to, you know, internalize and appreciate about it, despite the trauma that it essentially gave me upon the first time watching it. But that video will come out next Monday. On Tuesday the 14th, I think will probably be my review of Heart of the Naga by Lee Young-do. I feel like it'll be relatively beneficial to make a video about that earlier than later, so I'm going to go ahead and prioritize that review over a couple of the ones that I have sitting waiting right now. So that'll probably be what I do next Tuesday. And then next Thursday on the 16th, this is probably the least certain of any of my projected video schedule at this point, where I might do a video where I kind of talk about doing some short story coverage again. I've been wanting to read short stories again for a while, and I think I want to review them again. That doesn't necessarily mean that I want to revitalize Short Story Sundays in the format that it used to exist, but a lot of those videos have been amongst my more popular ones ever since I discontinued that series, and that was 3 years ago at this point. 2 years ago? 3? 2? It was in 2024. So anyway, either way, I want to read more short stories, and I think I might want to do that and then find a way to cover that just on the book binge on the channel and do like regular reviews for them, just have them be shorter videos or something. I'm not sure. So if I make a video about that kind of topic, I'll kind of discuss what some of my ideas are, and if anybody has input on what they might, you know, be more interested in seeing in that sense, because I don't want to revitalize Short Story Sundays in the way that it existed before, but I might want to do something along those lines as far as just covering short story content again, because I haven't in so long, and it's been basically 2 years since I've actually read any short stories that weren't Christopher Rocchio stuff, so I would like to fix that. Anyway, I'm not even sure if that's going to be a video that I produce, or least wise even confirming it for next Thursday, but that might be something that I do. That's just an idea that I have rolling in my head right now. The only other thing upcoming release wise is another live stream for The Last of Us Part 1 on the second channel on Saturday the 18th, where I'll probably play through all the Pittsburgh and Jackson sections. As again, chapter layout wise, seems like it'll probably be a pretty good split. So that's what I've got maybe going on the next couple of weeks. Like I said, asterisk next to some of those. I'm not 100% sure on that video schedule, but that is what I'm thinking about for the moment. As for this fortnight, you know, last time I spoke about the rest of June basically being a time to big chill and relax. You know, despite some personal struggles that were mixed in there, that was basically true. That is essentially what happened. I did nothing, essentially, besides my paid job plus gaming over the last couple of weeks. I did so little work that my entire July schedule, like I mentioned, still isn't even really set in stone. So that means that yeah, these next couple of weeks are basically me needing to buckle down on some of that stuff again, video production especially. So I plan on, buckling down on video production here, and then figuring out what the remainder of the summer schedule loosely looks like so that I can have a better idea of what things might be going on here, through the rest of the next couple of months, whereas the last couple of months I've been flying by the seat of my pants, mentally speaking. So, hopefully everybody's upcoming Fortnite goes a little bit better than the last one did, especially for me. That is a hope that I have mostly for myself, but I appreciate you for watching this video. If you did, especially if you made it all the way to the end through all of that rambling, I apologize. This video is way longer than I thought it would be, but also not any shorter than I thought it would be, given how much I wanted to talk about with like Far Cry 6 and stuff. But in either case, like I said, I do appreciate you for watching if you did. I hope to see you guys in the next one. But for now, I've been your host, King Crusoe. You can call me KC. Whatever the next video ends up being outside of the confirmed ones that I already mentioned, I hope to see you guys there.